Let's meditate. We have been talking about samadhi, calm and quiet mind, with no mind, no self. I mentioned about being at the state of absolute being as the core of our existence, so to speak. So with samadhi, when you get to the deepest, at the core level of being, absolute means everything as it is. Obviously, there's no thinking, no thought, no good and bad. You can call it emptiness, or I call it also eternal home, being at our eternal home, the core being. Yet being human, we have this mind to play with. So if you look at the spiritual journey, first is to know what's in the mind and what's beyond the mind, and no mind and no self. And to get to the absolute or state of absolute being, everything as it is. You can call that Satori, and you may feel like you're in nirvana, no more worries, and there's aliveness prevailing. And the mind is quiet. So that's Satori, or awakened state. Live wire, aliveness, bliss. Whatever that is, as Daisets point out, don't stay there. So what happens? The middle way I mentioned, you have this human mind on one end and the nature's way at the core, absolute being. So the human mind is floating like waves or a leaf on the water, and it changes. And living in life, in human society, we use word, language, and logic. As soon as we do that, there's you and me, right and wrong, good and bad, and delusion may pop up. As soon as you notice that, that's critical to notice it. But with a calm and quiet mind, without reacting, just stay put. Then you distill, you get to the calm and quiet mind without mind, no mind and no self. So in a way there's there and come back from there, nirvana, and back to the human society. And the middle way is to describe finding the connection between the mind and heart, so to speak, so that you can live in the human world and not to be caught up too much into the mind, good and bad. Have a very calm base, foundation, eternal home, as I call it. I use those words, but I lose being at home and get lost and into deluded thought, or almost in there, to come back. Just reminding, when I notice that I'm worried, then I stay put. As simple as that. Every day we do this meditation, 20 minutes. That's one way to anchor myself with whoever may be joining, so that this is like a repetition is mother of skill. Throw away the wrong skill, forgetting curve, and acquire the right skill. Find the state of absolute being. Words may not point experience, but words are the ways we may communicate, so that's what we do. And if you don't have the sense of being at the root, absolute state, quietude, that's fine. That's what it is. You accept that. And as soon as you accept that, like I mentioned about my case of trying to escape from the pain, and I questioned that, led to my acceptance of the pain, and that awakening and satori happened. I didn't know why, because it's not in the mind to understand. But afterward, studying this and that, then you, or me, finding, that's what it was. But still, that's just a talk, and I need to keep practicing it, strengthening it, but you are not trying, because the point is letting things to happen nature's way, at peace, no argument, no mind. One story, depends on how much time we have here, but the story popped up is Enoh, the sixth patriarch, who listened to this Diamond Sutra saying, not abiding anywhere, let the mind float as it want. So the mind flow as if by itself. But that phrase needs to be understood, that he has gone through to the core of the being and then coming back, and the mind functions as if still connected to the heart. So that's the wisdom. And that also is in the Confucius saying, at age 70, I'm trying to remember, let the mind flow by itself. Maybe I'll write it down when I remember it. But basically the same thing about what Enoh was talking about. You're following the way of mind, but not getting into trouble or something like that. Not going beyond the boundary. Just follow the mind. But it's the different mind that is aware of that absolute level, the way of nature, but not just the typical mind playing on its own. So the point that I thought I can share is that when the Enoh was training in the Zen temple, there's another guy, Jinshu, was there, and he posted a ge, which is like a poem, saying something like, my body is in the enlightened state, or something like that. And if there's dust coming, I'll just push it out, or something of that nature. And he posted, and Enoh was working in the kitchen, and he came up with his own and posted next to Jinshu's post. And what Enoh said is, let me think through, something like let me check, make sure that I understand. He said, in Satori state, enlightened state, there's no tree. And about the mirror, there's no where to find. From the beginning, there's nothing. So where is a place for the dust to come and stay? And that is pointing a deeper understanding, as if to connect to the root, the state of absolute being in nothingness. Just absolute state of being. So there's nothing more. Whereas Jinshu was still trying to get the dust out of his mind, kind of a thing, which is requiring effort, not effortless effort that Enoh was pointing. So it's just a story. So Enoh is found to be the master. There's a big difference between those two poems. And again, talking and saying and understanding is not that difficult. But the whole point is to directly experiencing it and acting on that basis. And that's the middle way. And being human, as well as going to the Pure Land in the case of Myokonin or Shin Buddhism, into Nibbana and then come back, and go to Nibbana and then come back. I talked a lot, and the talk is cheap, but it's kind of like shaking the tree or throwing the stone into the pond and leave it alone. It's not to think, but let it talk if it will. And find the connection, so to speak. As human, we lose it. But we can be enlightened, awakened. When you remember, if you remember, Enoch's poem was pointing from the beginning, there's nothing. And if you literally figure out in mind, that may sound very scary, I don't know how you feel. But my word for the same is, like I mentioned, it's the state of absolute being without any mind, no ego. It's the core state of being. Again, I call it eternal home. Mind cannot get there. Mind is added later when we are born. In a way, mind is like dust floating around, going this way and that way. But like I mentioned, Meister Eckhart, there's a spark, awakening that can happen from the core of our being that keep us alive and that keep us to go through life and death. You can call that as God. But not in the mind framework, what we are talking is. Not after the words comes first. This is before the words, in nothingness. And you feel at home. If you touch the core of our being, and you can experience it right now, or when you go to sleep in the bed, accept everything as it is, and just be. No thinking, no mind, no self. And that's the source of wisdom and compassion and life and death. So be happy. You're gonna ride the wave of the universe. We are. We don't have to struggle. Just be. But don't stay there. Come back and do the work. Fully energized. Inspired. Maybe. Maybe that keeps me going. Over some difficulties. Thank you for joining me. Hope to see you again. May all beings be happy.